16 consecutive wins. That streak ended on Sunday against Orlando. But as we record this, of course, the Cavs are 56-11, best record in the NBA, still with a mathematical chance to win 70 games this season, something only two teams in league history have accomplished. I want to start here, Chris, because I spent part of this morning looking through the Cavs game notes, which what else would someone do on a Tuesday morning? And I want to throw some of these rankings at you that we see in these game notes that Cleveland has at this point this season. They are first in offensive rating, second in points scored, first in three-point percentage, seventh in defensive rating, second in net rating. Out of all these numbers, or maybe there's another one that jumps out to you, what is the most surprising statistic? What have the Cavs excelled at that maybe you didn't think they would coming into the season?
I think it's the fact that there's the offense and the defense, and they're both in the top 10, Chris, because I think there was a belief that the Cavs could, and they had the talent to take the next step offensively. But there was always a question inside this organization of, okay, would it come at the expense of the defense? And it hasn't. They've taken the leap that they needed to offensively. They've been the best offensive team in the NBA, one of the best offensive teams in NBA history, but it hasn't come at the expense of the defense. And that's been the backbone, that's been the foundation for this team. Kenny Atkinson talked about it going all the way back to training camp in Sarasota. The first thing that they talked about when they gathered as a team in Sarasota, it wasn't about how do we make the offense better, although everybody knew that that had to happen. And it was like Kenny Atkinson came in and he had this reputation as an offensive mastermind, and he was going to take them to the next level and do Golden State Warriors type things. And the first day of training camp, he's talking about defense, and everyone's like, wait a minute. Like, that's not your reputation. What are you talking about? What about this offense that was middle of the pack? What about this offense that was historically bad in the NBA playoffs? What are you going to do to fix that? And he said, hey, look, like, I'm not going to go away from what we do best here in Cleveland. There's a foundation in place. There's an identity in place. And we need to be a great defensive team still. And the fact that they've been able to be that, and they've implemented all these different changes offensively, that to me is the most surprising and the most interesting aspect of this team when you talk about projecting them forward.
So how have they been able to do it? Because, you're right. Like, a lot of times when a team does make a big jump offensively, it does come at the expense of the defense, whether it's because of personnel changes, style of play. The scales tend to tip. I think the Knicks are kind of a great example of that. I mean,
Yeah.
they made upgrades offensively with Karl Anthony Towns, but the result has been they are significantly worse defensively this season. How have the Cavs been able to maintain that balance where they're elite offensively and really, really good defensively?
I think it's two things, Chris. I think, first of all, it's a commitment to it. You know, when they have that collective buy-in and they understand that that's their foundation, that's their backbone, they do the things that they need to do behind the scenes to make sure that it remains that way. And I think the other thing is, it comes down to personnel. Chris, they have two of the elite defensive anchors in the NBA, and Evan Mobley, who's probably going to be Defensive Player of the Year, and Jarrett Allen, whose defensive metrics are off the charts. And in most cases, probably would be on an all-defensive team, but because the shine is on Evan Mobley, and he gets majority of the credit for the defense for the Cavs, Jarrett's kind of the forgotten man. But in terms of defensive win shares, in terms of defensive box plus minus, in terms of all the things that point to an individual's impact on the defensive end of the floor, Jarrett Allen's been one of the best in the NBA. When you have those two guys and you've got 48 minutes of elite rim protection, you're going to have a chance. And yeah, the Cavs have other weaknesses on defense, and Darius Garland is quote unquote undersized for his position, and Donovan Mitchell doesn't have the reputation as an elite defender or anything along those lines. But Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen cover up mistakes. They erase mistakes. And with those two guys at the center of it all, the Cavs have always been an elite defense. So the personnel that they have is good enough and committed enough around those guys where they can cover up the weaknesses and make it so that there isn't a level of slippage on the defensive end of the floor. And I also think, Chris, the addition of DeAndre Hunter at the trade deadline for all of the conversation about what he was going to bring offensively, he has been a premier defensive player since arriving here in Cleveland. And he's the kind of player that they needed out there on the perimeter to make it all come together in this kind of way.